All right, hello YouTube. My name's Alan. You know why we're here. Let's talk metal. It's been a little while since I made a new wave of British heavy metal video, and the natives are getting restless, starting to get some very terse messages asking, where's the new wave of British heavy metal? Why haven't you made any new wave of British heavy metal yet? Why do you keep talking about power metal bands and black metal bands and death metal bands? Where's my burrito? Where's my burrito? Okay. Here's your new wave of British heavy metal burrito. Just gotta give me time to work around to them. Something else folks have been asking about lately is kind of just an observation, neither positive or negative, but folks have pointed out that you show a lot of singles, and I do. Tonight, I will show some larger pieces of vinyl. However, folks have been asking if I could show some more, like 12-inch stuff, and I do have a couple of 12-inch EPs tonight and a 10-inch EP of all things. We'll get to that one pretty soon. I did want to comment real quick, though, on why so many singles. What you got to remember is for certain genres, singles are a big deal, and new wave of British heavy metal is one of those. Growing up as a kid with my dad as a record collector, he never really collected 7-inch singles. He always wanted the full albums. You got more music, you got bigger pictures to look at on the front and back cover. So yeah, going to record shows with him as a kid, we never really flipped through the singles very much at all. When I got interested in new wave of British heavy metal, though, as a teenager in the very early 90s, I quickly realized that the only way to get records by a lot of these bands was to track down singles. That there were a lot of really cool bands with some cool songs I was hearing on compilation albums. But when I dug into it, the bands never released a full length. And so I literally remember having this mental conversation with myself and coming to grips with the fact that I was just going to have to start looking for singles if I wanted to own something by these bands. My only other option was to listen to the song or songs on the compilation albums, and that was all there was to hear. In the early 1990s, there was no internet to go look these things up on and hear them. There were no anthologies being released for any of these bands. You either found the dusty old single or you didn't get to hear any other tracks by these bands. And so that's why I do tend to have a lot of new wave of British heavy metal singles. The same is true for a lot of the obscure US metal from the early and mid 1980s. Those bands were never big enough to release a full album. So the only way to have any original physical product from them really is to track down that old single. Now, with some of those bands, yes, today, of course, we can get anthologies for a lot of the new wave of British heavy metal stuff, and you can find almost anything on YouTube. But yeah, if you're collecting the original stuff, that's all there really is to collect sometimes. But no singles tonight. Tonight, we shall look at some larger slabs of vinyl, and we're going to start with a 10-inch release. Now, 10-inch albums have always been a weird one. They go way, way back. Some of my dad's stuff in his collection of old 1950s rhythm and blues is on 10-inch vinyl, but even then, they were kind of a oddity. I don't know why the format never really caught on. I don't know if it was just that the public quickly got used to singles and full LPs, and there's just really no need for 10 inches in between. Maybe there's a production manufacturing reason that 10-inch records are more of a pain to make. I don't know. But yeah, they've always been a bit unusual. There's only 2 or 3 that I can think of from the new wave of British heavy metal. The best known one is probably one of the 618 different bands who named themselves Warrior. One of them had a 10-inch. I'm not even going to pretend to remember which one. You can sort that out if you need to know. I'm a sick little monkey, but I'm not that sick. You got to help yourself if you want to know which Warrior is which. I ain't going down that rabbit hole. But the one I want to talk about tonight is a different band, one named FIRECLOWN. Unusual name, kind of cool. It apparently is a reference to something from Michael Moorcock's fantasy writing. I've never read a lot of Moorcock, so I don't know the full origin of the name, but it turned up a couple of times in the new wave of British heavy metal. There's a Tigers of Pantang song called FIRECLOWN that I like a lot, and there was also a band called FIRECLOWN, and the band did release a 3-track 10-inch EP, and it's a pretty good one. I like it quite a bit. We're going to go over here to the tape and let you check out a little bit of the title track called Invasion. I'm going to jump about a minute into this. The first 50 seconds or so are just sort of, guitar noise, warm-up stuff. So we're going to try to get right on into the song. So here's FIRECLOWN playing Invasion. All right, there is a little bit of FIRECLOWN with Invasion. I really like the guitar tone they go for. It's kind of a heavy, a little bit echoey kind of guitar sound, gives it some weight. Like the vocal performance quite a bit. It's got a really strong voice, strong delivery, kind of a little bit of a bluesy sound. You can hear where it doesn't quite fit in with the typical new wave of British heavy metal ethos. And that's going to be a theme with all three of the records that I show tonight. They're all considered new wave of British heavy metal. They show up in lots of references, collectors lists and stuff, but they also are a little bit on the periphery of the movement. The other tracks on the FIRECLOWN EP, one of them is also quite good. Hold on, let me grab it again. Let's double check the other track titles. Yeah, the flip side has Poor Man, which is kind of a slower one, but kind of a little bit of a power ballad sound. Still a really good track. And the third track is called Magic. On Magic, they're straying really over towards the bluesy hard rock side of things. It's not a bad song, but it's definitely not a denim and leather classic either. You can kind of tell from the vocal stylings that this is a band that probably could get into that heavier blues rock sound when they wanted to, and on the track Magic they want to. So I like it, but there is a little bit of a spectrum of different styles going on with these three tracks. Now you may have noticed that I only showed the record itself. Alan, why didn't you show the cover? That's because there is no cover. This band somehow managed to release a 10-inch EP without any picture sleeve whatsoever. Apparently it just came in plain white wrappers. And they wonder why they had trouble selling copies. It's like, even if you're doing a 7-inch, not having any kind of picture sleeve is going to make it real hard for people to identify your item when they're flipping through the racks. If you have a 10-inch or a 12-inch record just sitting there in a plain white sleeve, it's going to be real hard to get people to stop and look at that thing. So yeah, I'm sure money was tight, but fellas, go wash a few more cars, or I don't know, something. You got to come up with enough money to actually add a cover to that thing. That's really all there is for FIRECLOWN. They did not go on to any big fame or fortune, of course. The EP came out in '83, and the band didn't do a whole lot more beyond that. They, last note on the EP, this is one that used to be a really high dollar collectible. On a lot of the lists I would see, like in the mid 90s, this record would be listed like $100, $150, listed as extremely scarce, blah, blah, blah. This is one where the prices come way, way down. Once we got into the internet age with eBay and stuff, copies turned up a lot more commonly. So it turned out this one wasn't that rare once everybody had a means to start looking around and posting them for everybody to see. So yeah, today the FIRECLOWN EP can be gotten for, I would be surprised if it would cost more than 30 or 40 bucks at most. Nice 10-inch item if you don't mind something going, a little bit, in the, heavier, bluesier direction, just a tad. And that's something that can also be said for our second entry for the night. This is another 12. Now this one's a 12-inch EP, not a 10-inch. It's by a band called Scorched Earth. So, with a name like that, it's just like, yeah, that's a metal name. Scorched Earth, burn them all. The, apocalyptic end of Armageddon. Hold your horses. This is still the new wave of British heavy metal. And no, these guys are not going to challenge Venom for, the crown of early, black metal satanic skull fuckery or anything. The Scorched Earth EP is another one that leans into that sort of bluesy hard rock sound a bit more. So before I talk about them anymore, let's jump over here and listen to a track from their EP. This is called Tomorrow Never Comes. And which track have I decided to pull up here? Where Do We Go From Here, which was also on a compilation once upon a time. Let's check out a little bit of this one.
Question and answer. I don't know what's going on. Why does it have to end this way?
All right, so there is a snippet from Where Do We Go From Here by Scorched Earth. Now, yeah, okay, if some of you are, zoning out a little bit right now, I get it. This isn't exactly Sweet Savage or early Jaguar territory. It definitely is going for, yeah, more that sort of bluesy or raunchier sound. But they do it quite well, in my opinion. This is not something to listen to when you want, a headbanging thrash attack. But if you want something a little bit more laid back, the band's actually quite good at it. Their vocalist has a very strong presence in the music. The songs are well put together. It is probably a little too laid back for its own good overall. The EP has kind of a weird history. The band apparently got a pretty fast start out of nowhere with some radio exposure on things like, BBC, Friday Rock Show and such. And they were picked up by that Carrere, and I'm probably mispronouncing the name of that label. It's the label most famous, of course, for having the early Saxon albums. They had a few other new wave of British heavy metal hopefuls on their roster as well. And they picked up on this band pretty quickly and got this EP out. I think I said before the clip that it was a 3-track EP. You may have noticed on the back cover, it's a 4-track EP. So a little mistake there earlier. So this one that I showed is the original pressing with a black cover. It failed miserably in terms of sales, but actually got reissued by Carrere the next year in a cover that's a little more colorful. It's got kind of like a maroon, white, orangey color scheme. It's still a pretty simple design. To me, it looks kind of crappy, but it's got like the sun supposed to be coming up over the horizon, and the band's logo is very different. That's the version you see more often. The one I showed is the original press from '84. Why did I bother getting the original instead of the easier to find second pressing? Because I'm a sick little monkey. Leave me alone. You know this. Don't make me start flinging things at you. It ain't going to be records I'm flinging. Monkey fling. You know where this is going. And oddly enough, the Scorched Earth EP even got another issuing later on in Greece, of all places, with it has the same artwork as the second pressing of the cover, but the color scheme is, again, a little bit different. So, they tried to make that thing go over. Man, how they tried to get that thing over the hump, but it just never did happen. I think there's also like a 7-inch DJ promo copy with a couple of the songs that was circulated to radio stations trying to get some interest going for the band, but it just wasn't there. And '84 was probably a tough time to make that sound happen. A lot of folks would tell you that the new wave of British heavy metal party was winding down really rapidly by '84, and these guys don't sound exactly new wave of British heavy metal to begin with. Things were going in heavier, more extreme directions. Trying to go back and align yourself as a metal adjacent band, but playing very hard rock blues influenced music, that had to be a tough sell. So yeah, that was about the end of the line for Scorched Earth. I've heard at least one of the recorded radio performances, and they did sound a little better live. There's a little more energy than the EP, so it's certainly not a essential release, but I do kind of like it. It is a little bit different. All right, got one last one to talk about tonight, and for that, we have to talk about the band Mayhem. No, it's not that band Mayhem, of course. Mayhem has been used by some other acts, including a UK band in the early '80s. This is kind of a weird one, though, because this band was really more of a punk band, and they released a couple of 7-inch pieces of vinyl in the early '80s, very much in the kind of harder edged early '80s punk sound. For example, they did shows with the Exploited, and also reportedly did shows with the Dead Kennedys. So getting a little bit more into that hardcore vein almost. But by '85, there had been some personnel changes and such, and the band had reportedly sort of realigned themselves as a little bit more of a metal outfit, not a full-out metal outfit. I think Warfare here, that you're going for a band that obviously has punk roots, but is starting to get that more metallic edge. Not sure if this was just due to the personnel and lineup changes, if they thought maybe this was a way to break through to a bigger audience, I don't think punk was all that popular in 1985, so maybe they were trying to find a new direction. Anyway, they ended up releasing a 3-track 12-inch EP. And this one, you look at it, and it is metal AF. Check this cover out. You've got, cartoon voluptuous women. You've got, drug paraphernalia. You've got, hellfire and, hands and scales. And, basically it's just kind of screaming vice. You got some poor sod over here in the corner is being weighed on the scales of justice or torment, or he's being weighed. I don't know what for. So yeah, it looks really promising as a metal release. But again, like the other two bands, this one has a little different sound, but these guys go for that, still have a lot of that punky vibe to them. So let's check out a track from this. We're going to check out a song called Blood Rush. And again, I'm going to skip the first minute and a half or so where they take a little too long getting the song into gear. But once it gets going, this one now has a little pep in its step. Let's check it out. All right, there is Mayhem cranking right along on the track Blood Rush from their 3-track 12-inch EP. Really cool sound. I like this one quite a bit. It's got a strong punk vibe to it, but just a heavy enough bite with the guitars to let it cross over into heavy metal territory a little bit. I've heard the band's two earlier 7-inch releases, and when they were working a little bit more just in straightforward punk and hardcore territory, and they're actually pretty good too. I'm not the biggest fan of that genre. It's just not my thing. But both of those are actually pretty solid releases too. Simple, high energy, but better than the standard fare. They were on the Riot City label in the early 80s, which I guess is somewhat known for the releases they did in the hardcore and punk for early 80s UK bands. But yeah, by 85, they released this EP, and all 3 tracks on it are actually pretty solid. I could have picked a clip from any of the 3. I just went with Blood Rush because it's the first one I dialed up. But it's a nice EP. You do see a 7-inch version of it out there as well. This was not unusual with new wave of British heavy metal releases. They would often do a 7-inch single and also a 12-inch single. The 12-inch version would cost a little bit more, but usually came with one extra song. And that's why I picked up this version. It does have an extra song called I Defy Part 1. That doesn't appear on the 7-inch version. I think the 7-inch is a lot harder to find. It also has a different cover art that's not quite as eye-catching. Really like the cool 12-inch picture sleeve for this one. But that was also about the end of the road for this version of Mayhem. The name would be picked up by some other bunch of wankers later in the decade who I think they made a record or two, a few waves, but that was another place, another time, another genre, and another country. Not for this particular video. All right, got to wrap this one up right now. So let's talk metal in the comments down below. What do you think of some of these bands that were more on the periphery of the new wave of British heavy metal? It's really easy to, of course, just, relish the tales of Saxon and Maiden and Motorhead and Weapon and all those bands that are quintessential new wave of British heavy metal. But there were a lot of bands that kind of got associated with the scene one way or the other that have clear roots in another scene. What are some of the bands in that style that you like in particular? Did any of these strike a chord with you? Scorched Earth? Maybe that's a little too sleepy sounding for some of you. Do you like that guitar tune on FIRECLOWN? Is that one worth checking out? Can you dig the punk vibes Mayhem we're still giving off? All right, let's call it right there for now. So everybody take care. And as always, until next time, remember, keep banging your head.